Alright, and hello everybody, I am the Super27 and welcome to another Dokkan Battle video. So, this has been a debate that I've seen around the community for a very long time, that the LR Gods and the LR Super Saiyan 4s from the 7th anniversary over on Dokkan were some of the best units on release in Dokkan history. Now, there are some people who go no, we gotta talk about STR Gogeta on launch, or we gotta talk about this character, that character, this character's in the discussion. But I'm gonna bring up the most commonly used examples that I see all the time, and we're gonna compare the meta that they came out with against the meta that these characters came out with. So let's first go over what the Gods and the Super Saiyan 4s do. Now, both of their base forms are essentially the same thing. So the LR Gods lead Power Beyond Super Saiyan movie heroes, and then they were the first 200% leader. So they give an extra 30% to those who were on the Kamehameha category, whereas the Super Saiyan 4s were Fuse Fighters and GT Heroes with an extra 30 to Kamehameha. So obviously that is meta breaking. When for years we were in a 170 meta, you know, some people were still using yellow coin LRs at the time who were just 150 to a couple of different weaker categories. So the fact that we were able to jump up an extra 30% for these additional categories, and you didn't necessarily need to run it. You could have still run a GT Heroes character who wasn't on Kamehameha, but just having that extra versatility made that this whole leader skill meta so insane, something that we are still seeing now that we're in the 9th anniversary. We have characters who have 3 leader skills and 3 leader skills here. We have Carnival LRs that are now leading to 200%. These guys are going to be easy Aing in just 6-7 months, and who knows, maybe we'll see 210% leader skills or something even crazier than that. Only time will tell. But I feel like this is why so many people think that these were characters who deserve to be in the threshold of on release. These guys were top 3 most powerful ever. I'm not of the band that I agree with that, and I'll go into why, but let's first of all dive into what they do. So I'll be reading off the LR Gods, but then once we go to their transform states, I'll read the differences between the two. So they have an entrance animation that activates once only. They get guaranteed guard for 1 turn, and an additional 1 key per type key sphere obtained, and an additional 77% attack and defense for 7 turns from their first entry turn. They get 120 stats at the start of turn. They get additional 1 key per key sphere obtained. They have a chance to crit plus 7% per rainbow key sphere obtained. They launch an additional super attack when key is 20 or more, and then they're super effective against all types when key is 24. Now, as far as I am aware, that is word for word. Yes. So, again, in their base forms, they are exactly the same, even down to what their transformation condition is. But before we get to that, let's talk about their super attack effects, because these should also be exactly the same, which is on their 12 key. They stack attack and defense, and then they do colossal damage to the enemy. And then on their 18 key, they also stack attack and defense, but they then do mega colossal damage to the enemy. So having a character who stacks was also another reason that these people, or some people probably think that these guys were top in the game, because if you were able to keep them, protect them, and just over and over again get multiple stacks and then fuse with them to their extremely powerful transform states, then, oh yeah, obviously this is a character that's going to look much, much better. But realistically, most people will transform with them as soon as possible, which is turn 4 from the start of battle, which is such a nice transformation condition. And again, probably why people don't really have an issue with their kit, because there's really not any glaring weakness in this character's kit outside of just the fact that in today's, I'm talking about today's meta, not necessarily at the time, but in today's meta, 120 to stats, that is really, really low. But they're doing so many different things throughout their passives. They have crit chance, they have stacking, they have guard for their first couple of turns. So they're doing a lot of really nice and unique things. So once we transform with them, let's go ahead and do the 4s first. We have Gogeta. Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta to be specific, whose new passive is he gets 177% attack and defense at the start of turn, an additional 2 key per type key sphere obtained, chance to crit plus 7%, and 7% damage reduction per rainbow T sphere obtained. They are super effective against all types. They have a 30% chance to crit. They have a high chance of launching an additional super attack, and then they have a high chance of nullifying a super attack targeted towards this character and then countering with tremendous power. And then for the gods, their passive is they get 177% attack and defense at the start of turn. They get 2 ki per type ki sphere obtained. They have a chance of critting and a chance of dodging plus 7% per rainbow ki sphere obtained. They get super effective against all types with ki is 16 or more. They launch an additional super attack when ki is 20 or more. They have a medium chance to perform a crit, and then they have a medium chance to dodge. So once they're in the transform states, they're slightly different. This is like a dodging character. This is a damage reduction character. They have slight differences that make the gods, I guess, a little bit more consistent. Because whereas if we look at here, they just have the guaranteed super effective against all types. They have the medium chance to crit. And then they just have a 50% chance of launching a guaranteed super. These guys, once you get them enough ki, their super attack is guaranteed. So it's more consistent to see more super attacks coming from the LR gods as opposed to the Super Saiyan 4s. But to kind of make up for that, the Super Saiyan 4s, they then have that 50% chance to counter super attacks targeted at this character. So where is the main argument for this character being one of the best of ever when being released? I think it ultimately comes down to their leader skill. Because if we're looking at characters that dropped around them, yes, they are incredibly much more powerful than characters like Tech Gogeta. I'm talking specifically about the Tanabata from 2021. They're much more powerful than like the Super Saiyan 2 Goku who goes into SSJ3. They're much stronger than Kid Buu, Future Gohan, and Trunks. Like all the characters that dropped around them, they were much, like staggeringly much more powerful. And at the time, we just got this fancy new thing called Red Zone, where at the time, this was like the most steep difficulty like jump ever. So the first 2 stages, you could argue, were around the same level as like the most difficult of the God event, but starting really with Cooler, if we look back, and this will kind of be like a very funny thing, yeah, 1 million for a super attack effect. Now, granted, this was a countdown, but at the time, a 1 million super attack, I imagine, was basically unheard of in like the God event. And it only got worse from there once we have characters like Janemba, who has like his Rage transformation and his, again, 1 million super attacks, and he's launching 350k normals. I remember when this was like difficult to tank. And then we get to Broly, which was at the time, and probably still is to this day, I don't know, this new Golden Frieza and UI Goku event make me kind of question, but I think on release, this was probably the most difficult event in the game. Oh, there was no question about it. Like, in the game's history, on release, this was, at the time, the most difficult event. Maybe this brand new thing on Tanabata could potentially be more difficult, but that is just a little bit more of a BS fight. So, before we talk about what I truly think about the gods, let's go on to the next competition, which is up here. This is another very commonly brought up unit. This is STR Gogeta from the first year anniversary. Now, I played this game on launch all the way back then. That's before I even had a phone. I played this on an iPod. But I did not take it like very, very seriously. I primarily just did like the story mode, if I'm being completely honest, because I had no idea any of the ins and outs of this game. That was really before like YouTubers started taking over this game. So everything in the game you kind of had to learn yourself. And I was kind of stupid and I didn't really pick up on that. So I would kind of open it, do the little story mode whenever, wait till my stamina ended, and that would be it. So I didn't really get to use this guy in his prime. But looking at it, I can kind of see it. This is, as far as I'm aware, would be the first all types leader in the game. Now, before this, it would be like AGL type would get 1 ki and whatever. So having just all types being able to unify your extreme class, your super class, all your different like types wheels, so you could have physical units being run with AGL units and int units being run with tech units and so on and so forth, was actually a huge deal. I can definitely see why that would be the case, instead of having to just run characters off your leader skill. And by actually giving them ki, you would be able to more consistently get super attacks, which wasn't always guaranteed back in the day. And then also here, being super effective against all types, back when like the big dogs, I don't know if this is the exact one, I think it is, but like this Red Zone Broly event, like this event used to be like a stone absorber. Now again, I didn't really play the game like that back then, so I didn't really get to like suffer this. But I remember like Rhyme Style, for example, trying to beat this event without using any Dragon Stones. That used to be the meta back then, would be how quickly you could beat an event using only this amount of Dragon Stones, or beating it without any Dragon Stones at all, like truly being like the outline for a no item run. A no stone run was kind of the thing. And I feel like if you were to do that as early on as possible, you would need a character like this, or the Janemba, who would be able to eat all of these hits, whereas this guy would be able to do the damage, so you could quickly rush through an event. Again, didn't really get to use this guy during his heyday, but I can definitely see why he would be, like, the most dominant. Now, he did kind of get power crept out pretty soon, which is an argument that I feel like a lot of people also tend to bring up. He isn't on here. He's not one of his better linking partners, but the AGL Vegeta, who does the counters and has the damage reduction against normal attacks, quickly did what this character did, just better, like roughly 6 or 7 months later. But that's not really going to be held against this character. This is talking about on release, what were they able to do. So I don't want to see anyone be like, well, this character got power cut really soon. That doesn't have anything to do with the argument. That is talking about purely on release and the content that was around the character. Speaking of which, the next most common option is this, the Universe 6 girls. And just by looking at their kit, I can definitely see why they would be considered the most dominant character on release, even at 55%. So, at the time, getting 66% of stats would actually be a little bit more relevant than it would be, like, today, where we're talking about getting 200% at the start of term. What do they actually get on their EZA? So, they essentially get, like, double their stats on their EZA. That doesn't have anything to do with it. I was just kind of wondering. But if we look down here, they get an extra 10% attack for Universe 6, Joined Forces, or Pure Saiyans on the team. So, if you're running a full team, this 160% attack can very quickly skyrocket. But this is what really made them crazy. They got 1 key up to 6, and a chance to dodge plus 6%, up to 66% with each attack performed. And then, if that wasn't crazy enough, they launch a guaranteed additional super attack when there's a Universal Survival Saga or Pure Saiyan category enemy. And they are stacking their defense on every single super attack. Now, you may be wondering, well, like, okay, yeah, sure, they can get it to dodge, but that takes quite a long time for them to build up. What makes them so crazy? Well, that would be none other than the legendary Goku event, which was the difficult content when they dropped. Now, if it's not apparent enough, Goku throughout this entire thing is a Pure Saiyan enemy. Throughout the entire fight, they're getting their guaranteed attacks, and it doesn't have to be supers. It just has to be an attack, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, with each attack performed. So, you would just do your 18 key. You would launch an additional right here. You would launch an additional right here. You would have your hit a potential system. So by doing just those 4 attacks that you were guaranteed each turn, that is what, 24% chance to dodge? So by the time that you got to the very end of the fight, this UI Goku right here, you may be saying, oh, well, he has the ability to nullify dodge. But at that point, you've been stacking for so long. Their defense is going to be able to eat this like it's nobody's business, especially back then when only doing 150 on your normals and basically 500k on the super attack effect. That's absolutely nothing to a character who throughout this whole fight is getting at bare minimum 2 defensive stacks per their turn. And it's honestly to their benefit that their stats are kind of low, meaning that it's going to take that much longer to be able to get through the legendary Goku event. That means that you just chip away at him little by little, getting as many stacks as possible to the point that you'd be able to tank everything and just destroy. And at the time, these were all pretty powerful teams. So if I'm not mistaken, you dropped about a year before STR Kefla dropped. So, I mean, obviously, STR Kefla, when she dropped, is a very good character. You give her 6 orbs, she's a 50% chance to dodge unit. She also dropped alongside Tech Kale and Tech Caulifla and STR Kale. But like Pure Sans is always going to be like an incredible team, especially back then. Again, this would be what were some Pure Sans that dropped around this time? Let's go ahead and see if we can't find where she dropped at. So it would be 2019. So we got to go back just a little bit further. I don't think I missed them. I'm on the global version? Yeah, I'm on the global version. When did you drop on global? Does it specify on global or just on JP? Alright, hold on. We'll find some units around there. Hold on, give me one sec. So looking at this list, this would have been characters who roughly would have dropped it in or around the time that Kale and Caulifla were in the game. So by looking at a couple of these, like this would be slightly after, because these were New Year's on the year after, if I'm not mistaken. So like Tech Bardock, or excuse me, AGL Bardock would have been just right around the corner, because this is the side banner unit for that guy. Obviously you have like Kale and Caulifla, their EZAs. At the time I think they would have just been like baseline TURs. This is one of the best characters in the game, like like aging characters ever just by having 80% damage reduction. It's a little bit silly. This is a powerhouse of a unit who would have dropped slightly beforehand, but at the time, like, this guy was pretty devastating, especially once he transformed. So I could definitely see why these guys at the time of their release were so dominant. And then the final option that I feel like no one is going to debate in any way, shape, or form, we have Beast Gohan. I'm not even going to say anything, but here, actually, yeah, I will. So this is the best character that has ever been released in the game, period. Now, you may be saying, well, why? Well, allow me to explain. So we're going to go over here. This is on the JP side of the wiki. If we look, since the start of this year, there are plenty of LRs that are just as powerful, if not more powerful, than all of the difficult content that we have in the game. So you don't need, you don't need Beast Gohan to beat any of these events. Whereas some of the units that we're going to be talking about later, you might have needed them to beat some of these new events. So if you don't need Beast Gohan to beat any of these new powerful events, what makes him so strong? Like, what makes him better on release than Gogeta, Broly, Buhan's EZA? I mean, we can go even further. Where are the rest of them at on this page? What makes him better than Cell Max, right? Cell Max is insane. Or the brand new unit who just dropped, Jiren. And Jiren is a unit who at the start of turn, after he transforms, has 400% to stats. I think that is by far the highest amount of start of turn stats the game has ever seen. And on his first turn, he's got 71% damage reduction. What could possibly make Beast so much more powerful that it's not even a debate that he is the best character ever in release when none of these other characters are even in the conversation? Well, here's why. This is by far the strongest character that has ever dropped, and I don't even really want to hear a debate. Again, I wasn't around really during the Kale and Khalifa stage. I wasn't playing the game like that when Gogeta dropped. I was playing the game very seriously when these guys dropped, so I can't speak on their behalf. And this is a character who hasn't even dropped on global yet, so it's like, you probably thinking that I'm just talking out of my ass. Well, allow me to explain. Not only is this one of the best leader skills in the game, it's not the best. It's definitely one of them, by having superheroes, which is the strongest team in the game, hands down. Miraculous Awakening, which has so many units, both old and new, who have the potential to EZA or are super good. And Bond Master and Disciple, which has consistently been one of the best teams in the game for the past 2 years, just because every Piccolo, every Gohan, and basically every Vegeta has been on it. 3 of the most, popular characters in the show have been on this category, meaning that it's constantly getting buffs. Not to mention it has niche buffs like Vados. Vados is an extremely good support unit who was on Bond Master and Disciple. Several Zamasu characters are actually on here, so it's like a very big grab bag of very good characters. Not to mention Entrusted Will and Movie Heroes. Pretty much every superhero is on Movie Hero, or vice versa. Entrusted Will is a very common category for all of these. So, again, very powerful leader skill. But this character, if you look at this entire kit, right here, at 55%, okay, it is better than any other character in the game at Rainbow status, which is something you could say about this character as well. So why is that so crazy? If we've had a character in the past who could do that exact same thing at 55%, could outright destroy the rest of the competition, and it not even necessarily be a close conversation. Well, that ultimately boils down to 2 things. Number 1, their team protection ability, and number 2, how perfectly sound their kit is. There is not a single restriction anywhere in here. You can run this character in any event, a long event, a short event, and they will do the exact same thing. They will dominate for the first 5 turns, and then on their next turn, you activate this, and nothing is really stopping them. So, what does their do? So, their active skill can be activated when they just get hit a single time. This is probably the easiest activation condition on any active skill in the game outside of maybe Physical Golden Frieza's, whose is just at the start of turn. Just get hit a single time. You then protect your entire rotation. They get extra defense, extra key, extra defense, and then, oh yeah, they get guaranteed crits for the turn. So, it does not matter if you have a team of full Cybermen. You activate this, you are surviving the turn. That is something that not a single character on this list is able to provide. And if you're running a dual lead of them, you're able to run it twice. And if you're running him on his team, guess who you could also use? You can use this boy right here, who also has the exact same ability. So if you're running him on his full potential, there are 3 team protection abilities, meaning that on 3 rotations, it is factually impossible to die. Oh, well, you're saying that, well, Cell Max can do the exact same thing, and he actually gets a much more insane effect. Beast actually probably has the worst team protection out of any character on this entire list. Because, yeah, I mean, you attack, every enemy attack gets targeted at him, but he just gets extra defense, meaning if he gets hit by super, he can still get stunned. He can still get sealed, meaning that you don't get to use the extra crit. Whereas if we look at this character, oh yeah, he gets 999% defense for 1 turn. Literally, this might as well just be a guaranteed dodge. And he actually gets to do an attack beforehand. Gogeta gets to do the same thing. Gogeta actually gets to do a major attack, as well as having guaranteed dodge, which is better than having that huge amount of defense. Because again, if he gets hit by a super attack that would stun or seal him, no, he doesn't. He gets to do everything that he's going to be doing while also protecting the team. So how can I sit here and act like this is still so much better? It's because of this passive. It is incredibly stupid. There are fights. People have been saying like, oh, Beast Gohan, eventually he's going to fall off once we get to longer events. Well, you remember that new event that I just mentioned? You know, this Frieza and Goku Supreme Miraculous Battle or whatever it's called. I have yet to see any footage of this character without his passive getting cooked. Yes, he is a character who kind of wants to have his active skill be activated, so obviously he wants this to be up throughout the duration of the fight, but I've yet to see a single clip, a single one, of this character deep into a fight without any of this, him getting caught at all. That's just because, oh, I don't know, maybe having 250% the stats at the start of turn, guaranteed crit, guaranteed guard, having immense amount of damage reduction throughout all of his passive, having an incredible link set, including one of the most stupid links in any game ever. Where is it? This right here, I know it says Sun Clan. This is All in the Family. Which is, 20% defense when you activate it, and one of the best characters in the game, on top of him, also has it. He protects his team. He leads one of the best teams. While, yes, this is incredibly stupid, it's really wacky to think that there are better versions of it. And even in content that is designed for this guy to not be good in, the brand new event where, like, obviously there is blocking, there is dodge nullifying, this guy doesn't care. He's future-proofed. And on release, when the most difficult event was the Cell Max Red Zone version 2, this was still one of the best fights for him because I can pull him up. Give me 1 second. So at the time, on release, this would probably be the most difficult Red Zone. Or if we're looking at it at the start of turn, right here, boom, start of the fight, he's doing a 2.5 million. All right, well, let's just talk about this real quick. So let's say turn 1, slot 1, he gets hit with that immediately. All right, well, he has 40% damage reduction here. He has guard right here, 250 stats right here. If he's at 24 key, let's see. He gets 80% attack and defense when key is at 24. And he gets an extra 20% damage reduction. All right, so he's at, what, 60% damage reduction and guard. Okay. Let's see. Oh, when he gets hit, he's also giving key support throughout the whole rotation. Kind of forgot all about that. When he receives a hit, for the rest of the turn, he gets 1 key up to 5, 20% crit, oh, and 20% attack and defense without any cap. And then once he gets hit 5 or more times, or he attacks 8 times, he gets another 20% damage reduction, 20% chance to crit, and all allies get 2 key. So, he's also giving stupid levels of support on top of his protection, on top of his damage, and his damage is so good, most fights, I will say most, you're able to just outright destroy them before this even becomes a question. So, definitively, this is one of the best units in the game. Now again, I don't really want to speak too much for Kale and Caulifla, or for STR Gogeta, but on release, I can see why. Now, granted, once content moved away from pure Saiyans, I could see these guys starting to struggle a little bit, and I could see, once actual challenge fights started to happen, this guy could be power crept, but that doesn't matter, because when they dropped, these guys were great for what they did. Being able to unify your teams instead of having characters without leader skills, giving every character key, and giving every character attack was huge in a time when that was not a guarantee. And being perfect for the brand new hardest fight, while also being on a lot of teams, by the way, a lot of weak teams, and so the only one that would, the teams that didn't exist when they did, I guess I should say, would be Power Beyond Super Saiyan, Bond of Friendship, Tournament Participants, and Super Bosses. So they were on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They were on 8 teams. So those 8 teams could have outright just destroyed the hardest event in the game when so many missions, all, like, a lot of the difficulty of this also came from being, like, beat it with this team, beat it with this team, beat it with that team. So being on 8 teams of varying power levels also would have helped a ton. So where do I stand on these guys? I do not think that these guys, on release, were some of the best units in the game. Now, hear me correctly when I say this, okay? These guys were needed, all right? Were needed day one to be able to beat this red zone right here. If you did not have them at 55% or at rainbow status or at anything, if you didn't even have them, there was no point in even trying to beat these. There were no other characters, there were no other teams in the game that even came close. But they did not, in any circumstance of the word, destroy the content that was around them. They were needed. They did not destroy. Again, can't speak for this, but I can understand why. Being able to do super effective against all types, getting a lot of stats right here, and being a perfect leader for the time, I could see this guy destroying any single Dokkan event in the game, which again, at the time, was the difficult content. You give these girls right here, they absolutely murder this. There is no way this event would even be a challenge. And then this kid just destroys everything. It's not even fair. It's not even fair. This guy at 55% with a Cyberman is better than a lot of other teams in this game. It's not even fair. These guys were good. They had by far the best leader skill in the game. And they had to be run. But I have a couple of clips here that I'm going to show. Unfortunately, most of the footage is of the LR gods getting clapped because it was the only thing I could find. I just really quickly went over to the Truth video. So right here, this is STR Sin Shinron. This was his red zone right here. So in the stage right here, obviously at the time they weren't supposed to go into slot 1, but this is turn 6. Both of the units were able to get a couple of stacks off. Looking at this rotation, these guys had to go into slot 1. Both of them had type disadvantage. What was the defense right there? What was the defense right there? So obviously they don't have guard or anything. They don't have their dodge until they transform. Nothing like that. I want to see if I'm able to stop it once it shows the stats. Why is it doing this? So they were at, right here, 400k defense, all right? So 400k defense. Now, obviously, again, this is not an ideal situation. They are lacking a lot of HP. But this isn't even the hardest stage that dropped at the time. They ate 700k. Again, on release, this is a rainbow character who got multiple stacks off. Now, you could say they could have been transformed. Yes, Truth could have transformed them in this instance. But then what would that have led into? It was just a not very ideal situation. Because then you would have just been relying on dodge. How many rainbow orbs were there at the time? Let's see. So at the time, they could get upwards to 3, so they would have a 21% chance to dodge, which still isn't great if I'm being honest. So they have a 30% chance to dodge, then a 21, which isn't great. And then this fight actually ends with a countdown super, which at the time was like a 1.5, if I'm not mistaken. No unit on this team would have lived it. So I understand the game plan. You want to greed as many stacks as possible. So once we get to that final phase, even though they're going to be type disadvantaged, they're still going to be doing a lot of damage. So here is another example. This is Red Zone Broly. So his super attack, we could actually pull up what his super attack effect is. So right here, it is a 1.2 million. Okay. So second clip right here, 1.2 million. This is yet again the transformed gods after they did a bunch of supers on the turn. 300k. Oh no, this is the wrong clip. Wrong clip. My fault. Wrong clip. So in slot 1, we didn't get to see what their defensive stat was, but that is still a lot of damage. Did they live? Yes. Is this a winning run? Yes, but that is still a lot of damage for a type advantage brand new unit to be tanking. That is a lot. Now, if you remember all the way back to like during when I was doing the worldwide download celebration stuff, up against Fusion Zamasu and how I would always complain about how Sword of Hope would eat like 200k on his that AoE, even though he was a type advantage brand new summonable unit. Yeah, you could say that Sword of Hope at the time was one of the best units in the game. That does not change the fact that you did not necessarily need him to beat any of these fights. Just because, yes, he was good. He was one of the better units in the game, but he still struggled. And these guys struggled as well, because we're looking kind of at this whole team. Obviously, he wants to get the Dokkan attack off here. Now, I could definitely see this being a misplay. In this instant, I would have put them right here. But then what would you do if they super attacked in the slot right there, where we actually don't have to wonder too much? This is just a few turns later. Whoops. They eat 200k. 200k. And that's post-super, which, again, you could say is quite good tanking, or you could say that's potentially really bad. Because back then, we're at a 700 H. Like, this isn't where we're at, like, 800k plus meta. That is decent enough tanking, I will give them that. But being able to do that post-super in an event that also, you know, nullifies dodge. So, in an event where these characters are built around dodge, we have an attack guaranteed to hit boss. And we can go over to Omega Shenron as well. These guys, yes, you needed them to beat these events, but they did not rule the game. It's an argument of semantics, I would, like, that's my opinion. If you truly think that these guys on release were like top 10 just because you were able to actually beat these really difficult events with them, I can understand why. But when you're looking at their kits, and if you're looking at what they were up against and compare that to what other units are able to do, it does kind of seem to be drawn night and day. Because these guys weren't even the best 200% during their year. Very quickly, characters like Vegeta and Trunks were able to power creep them. I would even argue the Ginyu Force team had a better 200% leader skill, just because at the time you could run the full Ginyu Force team. Do we share any links with the Ginyu Force team where I could pull them up? I don't think so. Let's see if I can't find Ginyu real quick. But like their leader skill, they had a lot of versatility. And to this day, you could still run these guys, but I feel like on release, and this is like the important part that I'm really going to try to drive home, on release, there were just outright better units, or excuse me, now since then, with like what they were doing on release compared to what other units were able to do on release, I don't think that they were this dominant or untouchable threat that some people would think they are. Yeah, looking at this, yeah, Terrifying Conquerors or Planet Namek Saga, and an extra 30 to Space Traveling Warriors. Yeah, at the time, I feel like this definitely has to be like a killer leader skill, just because you would run his 2 side banner units, this free-to-play LR EZA, you would do the physical EZA, and then you would run like physical Raccoon. I feel like that's honestly a better leader skill than what the gods were able to provide. So yes, ultimately, this is a battle of semantics. It's a battle of arguments. It's a battle of what you value more as a player. I'm one of these people who truly don't think that you can have a wrong opinion. I think that we can each have our own opinion and disagree, as long as we're not being hateful towards each other or harming anyone in any single way. I don't really think it matters too much if I think one thing and you think another. I don't care. Because at the end of the day, I really don't. But this is a fun little, like, exercise, and I kind of like to see where people are coming from. Because, like, yes, I do agree, on release, you needed them. There were no other units in the game that even came close to what they were doing. I don't care about how they power crept. I don't care about new events that came on afterwards. I don't care. On release, these guys were needed to do any of these events, but they struggled. And this is another thing. They struggled against this guy because you couldn't use their active skills. It almost feels like they were designed in such a way that you would be able to beat these events, but struggle. Whereas these characters were designed specifically so that you did not have to struggle. And I think that is a huge, huge, huge difference. So, ultimately, that's my opinion. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. But that is going to be all for this time, guys. I've been the Super27. I'm a variety Twitch streamer and an upcoming PNG YouTuber trying to make it big in the world. I have a Twitter, a Twitch, a TikTok, and a YouTube, the links of which can all be found in the description of this video. And while you're down there, don't forget to like, subscribe, share me around, and leave me a comment. Again, let me know, who is your top 3, or who is the big 3 in your opinion in Dokkan history? Who are those goats who just on release just walked out, dick swinging, and destroyed the entire game? Do you agree with everything I said, or am I just a dumb fucking idiot and I don't know what I'm talking about? I don't know. Let me know in the comment section down below. But I feel like I gave every unit their due justification, and I feel like I can understand every single possible argument It's just, again, I think ultimately this comes down to this character does not struggle. This character did not struggle. This character did not struggle. You needed this character, but you were going to be crawling to get that victory. And there are other characters like this, like AGL Vegito and Tech Merge Zamasu. I would argue they're in the same spot. Yeah, on release, they were the most powerful LRs in the game, but the content around them, oh brother, you were having a time and a half getting to see their maximum potential and everything. I feel like it's a very similar argument where you're like, yes, they were powerful, yes, they were needed, but they didn't destroy. So, again, let me know. Feel free to agree or disagree. I would love just any sort of interaction I can get from you guys. But yeah, that's going to be all for now. So as always, I've been the Super 27, and I am signing off.